With a landslide victory and an election without real competition, Russia President Vladimir Putin secures another term in power. And following a downturn during the pandemic, marriage rates in the U.S. are on the rise. The Morning Rundown starts now.
From the Straight Arrow News Studio, bringing the stories that matter to you from across the United States and around the world. This is the Morning Rundown.
Today is Monday, March 18th. Thank you for joining us. I'm Kara Rucker. Vladimir Putin is celebrating this morning after what was considered to be a foregone conclusion. The Russian leader won his country's presidential election on Sunday in a landslide victory with no true competition. The Kremlin claiming Putin won 87% of the vote, the win keeping the Russian president in power for another 6 years, which would see him overtaking Joseph Stalin as the longest-serving modern leader. Putin describing his win as a sign of the Russian people having hope and trust in him. Referencing the invasion of Ukraine, Putin says his next term would focus on the military operation. Critics condemning the election, saying opposition to Putin has either been exiled or imprisoned, a U.S. official calling the election not free nor fair. Despite the predicted outcome, thousands of protesters formed long lines at polling stations on the final day of voting in the three-day election as part of a Noon Against Putin demonstration. They were responding to a call by late opposition leader Alexei Navalny, who just before his death told people to gather to show their dissent against Putin's two-decade rule. After the votes came in, Putin held a news conference where he made his first public comments about Navalny's death, claiming he was considering a prisoner swap before the opposition leader died. Early this morning, as U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken was in Seoul for a democracy conference, North Korea conducted its first missile test in 2 months, launching several short-range ballistic missiles into its eastern seas. The test came on the heels of an 11-day military drill between South Korea and the U.S., which North Korea has considered as a rehearsal for an invasion. Japanese and South Korean officials reported that 3 missiles were fired, traveling nearly 200 miles before landing off the East Coast. They've denounced these tests as breaches of UN Security Council resolutions. The U.S., Japan, and South Korea have sharply criticized the missile launches, citing them as threats to neighboring countries and to regional peace and security. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has fired back against Chuck Schumer after the U.S. Senate Majority Leader called him a major obstacle to peace. During a speech in the Senate last week, Schumer, the highest-ranking Jewish elected official in the U.S. and longtime supporter of Israel, called for new elections in Israel when the war starts to wind down. Speaking to CNN on Sunday, Netanyahu called Schumer's comments totally inappropriate.
It's inappropriate for to go to a sister democracy and try to replace the elected leadership there. That's something that the Israeli public does on its own. And we're not a banana republic. I think the only government that we should be working on to bring down now is the terrorist tyranny in Gaza, the Hamas tyranny that murdered over 1,000 Israelis, including some dozens of Americans, and is holding Americans and Israelis hostage. That's what we should be focused on.
Schumer releasing a statement in response saying, quote, "It's a good thing that a serious discussion has now begun to ensure Israel's future security and prosperity once Hamas has been defeated." The first charter flight arranged by the U.S. State Department from Haiti landed in Miami on Sunday, the plane carrying more than 30 Americans seeking refuge from the escalating gang violence in the country. This evacuation followed the U.S. Embassy's urgent advice for Americans to leave Haiti. The country is struggling with severe gang violence and a lack of clear leadership, leading to the shutdown of its main airport. In response, the U.S. provided limited charter flights from a northern city less affected by the turmoil. However, officials did note that Americans had to reach the airport on their own. Government officials in Miami are helping the evacuees in planning their next steps. Meanwhile, the U.S. military deployed additional forces to help strengthen security at the U.S. Embassy in Haiti. It looks like a lot more Americans have popped the question in recent years. A new CDC report says marriage rates in the United States have returned to pre-pandemic highs. In 2022, there were more than 2 million marriages, the first time the total surpassed that mark since 2019. There must be a lot of Vegas weddings because Nevada is the state with the highest marriage rates, followed by Hawaii. Also in its report, the CDC says while more people are getting married, divorce rates are going down. Finally this morning, let the madness begin. The fields are set for the NCAA men's and women's basketball tournaments after Selection Sunday saw the brackets being filled out with the 68 teams vying for their one shining moment. On the men's side, defending champion Connecticut earned the top seed, along with Purdue, North Carolina, and Houston. Over in the women's tournament, undefeated South Carolina is joined by Iowa, Texas, and USC as the number 1 seeds. The action starts on Tuesday with the start of the men's first 4 games, followed by the men's first round tipping off on Thursday and the women's first round beginning on Friday. These are your top stories for this Monday. Unbiased, straight facts, that's Straight Arrow News. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Until then, I'm Kara Rucker. Have a great day.